Hi everybody. This response is to Dylan, and the response is over the question of what's the difference between separatism and devolution. Very good question. It's explained on page 187 of the textbook, so be sure and read 187 of the textbook. Anyway, separatism is the desire of a group, and the group usually identifies itself as a nation. The desire of a group to break away from their state and to become independent. Okay, so the United States did that in 1775, and the separatist movements are very serious business. If you recall, the Declaration of Independence in 1776 was pretty serious. The folks who wrote it knew that they were committing treason, and they realized that signing their name to the Declaration of Independence was pretty much a death warrant if they lost the war. So the separatist movement is very, very serious business. It's a 737 today. Usually it's just an Embraer, so 737 a little bit louder. Anyway, so a separatist movement is typically considered by states to be very, very dangerous, and so state actors, or the military, will typically put down the separatist movement. If the separatist movement begins to become an all-out rebellion, then it's possible that you can have independence. But most of the time, separatist movements include non-state actors, and therefore they're never so much outright rebellions. They become insurgencies, and insurgencies are awful. Separatist insurgencies involve non-combatants, and it's very difficult for governments to neutralize insurgencies that are separatist insurgencies. The United States had a couple of wars in the last century in which we wound up being wound up propping up governments and fighting separatist insurgencies. Awful things. Vietnam and Iraq. The very long wars typically, and the worst thing about those wars was that nobody was really sure about who the enemy was. So separatist insurgencies can be really, really ugly. Now, when a state responds against a separatist insurgency, that's referred to as counter-insurgency. So the United States has fought counter-insurgent wars in recent history. Okay, so some examples. The Basque country in northeastern Spain, bordering the French-Spanish boundary, the Basque country is a relatively poor area in Spain, and it has a very distinctive culture, and they have wanted their independence for decades. The Basque have never been successful at gaining much autonomy. Recently a little bit, but not very much, not nearly as much as they wished. They would like to have their own country, but that's not going to happen anytime soon. So the Basque country, because they don't have a lot of economic clout, for the most part have been fighting insurgencies, weak insurgencies involving terrorism, but for the most part it's the type of it's the type of resistance that is occasionally violent. Now, another area of Spain, Catalonia, to the south of on the southeastern part of Spain, is a relatively affluent part of Spain, and it has its own language, Catalan, and it does very well. So it has a lot of political pull. And what it has done is, as it has sought more autonomy, it's done so peacefully and politically. And as a result, it has received a certain degree of political autonomy. And the way that it has received a little bit of political autonomy is through a process that we call devolution. So devolution is a kind of decentralization whereby a state, like Spain, transfers a little bit of power to a region, or perhaps to a self-defined group. And but the state doesn't grant it independence. Now, importantly, there are two types of spatial organizations of territory among countries. There's the federal system, which is what we have in the United States and Canada, Australia, and Germany, and the unitary state system, which is what is found in France and the United Kingdom and China and a number of other countries. It's usually the case that unitary states engage in the process of devolution, that is, granting additional powers, sort of special powers, sort of special, special whatever to certain regions. In other words, they grease the squeaky wheels. Federal systems usually don't have to do that too much. However, in the United States, we have something that's kind of interesting. We have federally recognized Indian tribes. And federally recognized Indian tribes in the United States have a non-territorial existence as nations. I'm going to talk a little bit about them in another reply. So, sorry for the length. I hope this was helpful.